You can never, ever, ever measure how bad a guy wants it.
How many quarterbacks were taken ahead of Tom Brady?
This is one of the great mistakes of all time.
You work your tail off. 4 quarters now, 4 quarters. Let's go. That was 3, Brett, number 3. 2. First round selection.
The Lombardi Trophy, the holy grail of the NFL, forged before each season by a master craftsman from Tiffany's. Often, it's won by the team that shops at Walmart.
We had to find somebody that we felt had more potential than other people did.
You got to study a kid, what he's made of. There's so many things that go into a guy becoming a success story in the National Football League.
Our list of the top 10 draft steals in NFL history was compiled through simple criteria. What players proved to be the biggest bargains and surprises for their draft position? Plenty who were passed over didn't make the list.
Zach Thomas was coming the whole time.
Zach Thomas went in the 5th round, Jackie Smith the 10th, and Raymond Berry wasn't selected into the 20th round. But our list begins with Captain America.
The number 10 draft steal of all time, Roger Staubach.
Roger Staubach, Navy quarterback.
I miss football a great deal, but I do enjoy the Navy. And I have a big job over here, and I'm going to do that.
Roger Staubach won the Heisman Trophy in 1963, but following that season, he was just the 129th player taken in the NFL draft.
Tex Schramm was sitting there going, I'm in the 10th round. What if I just take a flyer on Roger Staubach?
The Dallas Cowboys knew all along Staubach had 1 year of eligibility remaining at the Naval Academy.
Back then they had what they called you could draft future. If your graduating class was that year, then you could be drafted as a future even though they had another year of eligibility. So he actually came out in 1965.
But once college ended for Staubach, so too did football. In its place, a stint in Vietnam.
We, the class of 1964 of the United States Naval Academy, do hereby accept commission as officers in the United States Navy.
Teams tended to shy away from service academy players because with the military commitment, they knew that they wouldn't have a full career out of them.
A team could never do that these days. I don't think they could ever take a guy and wait the amount of time Dallas could wait. I mean, clearly he probably stayed in shape being in the service. These days, more than 2 years, and the rust factor seems to be prohibitive.
Well, you're 24 years old now. Do you think you'll be in shape 3 years from now?
I've been told that 29 is a prime of your life. I have 13 years of real activity in me as far as athletics is concerned.
What Staubach did back then was just a testament to what a great athlete he was.
When Staubach returned to football, his athleticism transformed the Cowboys' offense.
Landry wanted a true drop-back quarterback, execute the play as it's drawn up. But that wasn't Roger Staubach. And I think that allowed Staubach, after that long delay, to come in the NFL and have success.
Well, the Cowboys need a miracle. He's going long. Down the near sideline, Staubach hit Pearson on a 50-yard touchdown.
Roger Staubach, our number 10 draft steal of all time, led the Cowboys to 2 world championships.
He arrived at the NFL at its moment when it was exploding on television, and he represented character, clean cut. You know, he had it all.
Everyone in the world compares me to Joe Namath. You know, the idea of off the field, he's single, bachelor swinging, I'm married and family, and, you know, I enjoy sex as much as Joe Namath. Only I do it with one girl, you know? But it's still fun.
He was the great American figure, and I think that's why he really became America's quarterback, America's football player on America's team.
The number 9 draft steal of all time, Larry Wilson.
Longfellow has a line in one of his poems, and he says that in life, a man must be either the anvil or the hammer. And Larry Wilson was both.
every modern-day safety owes their game to our number 9 steal, Larry Wilson.
Why in the world he lasted to the 7th round? I imagine a lot had to do probably with his size.
Larry Wilson was such a unique physical specimen, and he was so little, he was so wiry. The ability to really ascertain how good college football players were in the 60s was very limited because you just didn't see that much of them on television.
Due to the lack of film, the Cardinals didn't draft Wilson until the 7th round.
Larry Wilson was an offensive player in college. He was a running back. When he went to training camp with the Cardinals, they didn't really need another running back. They had just lost Night Train Lane, so they were a little short in the secondary.
Wilson, a man who once had all his teeth knocked out, was fearless in the secondary.
He had unbelievable ball skills. I can remember him intercepting a pass with 2 casts on his arm.
Courageous Larry Wilson playing with 2 broken hands. Pirates Nelson's pass.
Larry certainly redefined the safety position, and you got to be fortunate. If you're going to be competitive in this league, it won't be just with your first and your second round draft choices.
The thing that made Larry Wilson great and such a steal was that he became the master of the safety blitz.
Larry Wilson would blitz almost every play.
When you watch safeties of today, safeties that are used to blitz, to play on the other side of the line of scrimmage, all of those guys really now are doing what Larry Wilson really began doing 40 years ago.
You're thankful for guys like that who kind of paved the way. One of the things I've always loved about the position is that you get to do a little bit of everything, and as you study football, that wasn't always the case, and Larry Wilson kind of changed that.
When you talk about Larry Wilson, you're talking about a sui generis, someone that there'll never be another one like him.
The number 8 draft steal of all time, Ray Guy.
Al liked to find the guy that he thought nobody else particularly thought of as a first, second, or third round pick.
Now Ray Guy comes in for his first punt of the day. Kick is away. There's a high, twisting, hang-time spiral.
To this day, Ray Guy remains the only punter drafted in the first round, and he was a steal.
Al, as you know, likes to do things that are a little off the charts. Al Davis was a risk taker. Al knew a player when he saw one, and he'd go after him.
Al was always a guy who dared to be different, not just to be different, but because he thought it was right.
Coming out of Southern Miss, Guy was an All-American punter.
When Al Davis drafted Ray Guy in '73, it really shocked everybody to select a punter.
I'm thinking to myself, a punter in the first round. And when we go to draft him, the guy has a broken foot. Man, this takes some guts to do this.
Usually you think, well, you're going to pick a guy who's in there every down.
The Raiders realized Guy's booming kicks and 5-second hang times could revolutionize special teams.
But we had just gone through 2 years of just mediocre punting with the Raiders.
Here comes the kick. It is blocked. It's loose on the 5-yard line. And it's a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
We liked the idea of adding somebody to our defense in the form of a punter, where the opposition would have to go 80 yards rather than 50 yards.
We made the pick. He came in, the foot was healed. And as soon as we saw those 60, 70-yard punts, we knew we made the right pick right there.
Once a Raider, our number 8 steal fit right in and became the center of controversy.
We have an unofficial hang time of 5 seconds here.
Guy was such a great punter. One time, one of his punts hit the roof of the Superdome.
Guy, of course, I think you probably well know, hit the overhead TV screens in the Pro Bowl of '76. They've now elevated that screen from 90 feet up to 200.
I've been in the game 41 years, and I've had occasion to see a lot of good punters. And, I don't know if he's the best, but it won't take long to call the roll.
If I were to pick one player that would get the adulation of all of our past great players, the greatest punter who ever played the game, Ray Guy would be someone that everyone could nod their head and say, gee, that's a good choice, Coach.
The number 7 draft steal of all time, Shannon Sharpe.
I'm calling the president. President, we need a National Guard. We need as many men as you can spare because we are killing the Patriots.
It's hard to believe, but the NFL's all-time leading tight end was the 192nd player taken in the 1990 draft.
Touchdown! Sometimes very difficult for you to tell how good a player is because the competition is not that great.
He came from Savannah State, so nobody knew much about Savannah State for starters.
Sharp came out of Savannah State too slow to be an NFL wide receiver and too small to play tight end.
He was what we call a tweener. Is he going to be a big wide receiver, or is he going to be a guy that's going to have to gain a little strength and be a tight end? We weren't sure.
They didn't know what he was. All they knew was that it was Sterling Sharp's little brother.
Sterling Sharp, once he caught it, they didn't have a chance.
Isn't that enough of a hint that you'd say, hey, somebody in this guy's family knows how to play football?
22 receivers were taken ahead of Shannon Sharp. The Steelers drafted Eric Green in the first round, and later on, Mike Jones, Jesse Anderson, and Derek Walker went well before our number 7 steal.
We had an argument on draft day. One guy wanted a linebacker from LSU, another one wanted Shannon Sharp. The linebacker won out, and we were fortunate enough that Shannon was there in the 7th round, so we got both players.
When I came to the league, you wanted someone 270 pounds to 300 pounds, about 6'5", that could dominate the line of scrimmage. And if he caught a pass or two, oh, that was well and good, but you wanted to be able to run the football.
The coaches were making the decisions on receivers to keep, and coaches normally don't ask players' opinions, but I can remember Dan Reeves asking John, what do you think of Sharp? And John really stood up for him and said, we'll find something for him.
What the Broncos found was that their tweener was impossible to match up with.
Well, I did a lot of my blocking on the moves because I was so small. That caused a substantial problem for the defense in the pass route because I was too physical for a corner. I was faster than linebackers and tight ends.
Good Lord, will somebody cover this guy?
Sharp may have been a 7th-round pick, but he was always a first-round comedian.
Down goes Frazier. Tell the people to choose who's best. Boys, high, we got to cool off. They coming. Help is on the way. Here's that move out.
No one was laughing when our number 7 steal helped the Broncos win 2 Super Bowls.
Undisputed heavyweight champions of the world.
He was even the Ravens' go-to receiver in Baltimore's Super Bowl run in 2000.
Caught by Shannon Sharp on a deflection. Oh, my goodness. That's why we got him.
When he retired in 2004, Sharp had more catches than any tight end in NFL history.
Touchdown. What a great catch. You're kidding me. Shannon Sharp makes it good.
I watched him go from a oversized wide receiver and playing small-time college football and to walking in and probably becoming one of the greatest tight ends in the history of football.
This guy's going to walk into the Hall of Fame.
Dynamic runners aren't always drafted high.
Hand off to Rudy, right side. Touchdown. Yeah.
Rudy Johnson was selected in the 4th round. Wilbert Montgomery went in the 6th. And 364 players were drafted before Billy White Shoes Johnson.
Touchdown, Atlanta!
But none of them captivated the country like a 2-sport star from Auburn.
The number 6 draft steal of all time, Bo Jackson.
Al was a guy that was intrigued by great physical specimens, and there was no better physical specimen than Bo Jackson.
It's a foot race. Will anybody catch him? Holy Toledo!
And he was 6'1". He was 230 pounds, chiseled marble. Incredible speed, breathtaking speed. There were clockings of him running the 40-yard dash in 4.12 seconds. You're talking about a once-in-a-generation player.
In 1986, Bo was the undisputed number 1 player entering the NFL draft. The Heisman Trophy winner out of Auburn was the most dominant college player since Herschel Walker.
If it's all about the measurables, Bo Jackson was off the charts on everything. Every scout ran back to his coach and said, you got to have this guy.
That's the shortest report I ever wrote as a scout was Bo Jackson. I gave him the highest grade you could give a player.
The Buccaneers had the first pick in the draft and flew Bo down to Tampa for a physical.
He was assured there was no NCAA violation involved in this because he had spring baseball to think about at Auburn. He returned to school only to be told that was a violation. You can't play your final year of baseball, which broke his heart. And there are some people that think that he held that against the Buccaneers.
The Buccaneers select first choice on the first round. Running back from Auburn, Bo Jackson.
One of the problems that was typical of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was the inability of the Bucs to pay the Bucs.
Hugh Culverhouse was the owner back then, and he realized he could make money at this without even really trying to win. Players at that point didn't want to come anywhere near Tampa Bay because it was a graveyard on draft day.
And naturally, Bo Jackson, realizing that he is one of the great athletes of his era, had options.
There was a real desire on his part that, I want to play baseball.
When a guy has that option, okay, and you're not a very good football team, you have to overpay to get him. Otherwise, he's not going to sign.
Bo told the Bucs to walk the plank and became a royal nightmare by playing baseball in Kansas City. Jackson took less money to play a sport he loved more. Since Bo was unsigned, any team could redraft him. In 1985, the Raiders were beaten to the punch drafting Herschel Walker out of the USFL. Al Davis wasn't about to miss out on another star running back.
We were anticipating drafting Herschel Walker, but we weren't sure what the value really was of a guy like that.
Herschel breaks away. Touchdown! Herschel Walker!
A few of us left the room thinking we were drafting Herschel Walker, and when we came back, we had drafted somebody else.
We drafted a guy named Jamie Kimmel. He was a long snapper linebacker from Syracuse, and I could always remember looking at Jamie Kimmel and always thinking, we should have drafted that Herschel Walker guy.
And from that point on, I think Al kicked himself for not doing that.
When the Bo Jackson thing came up 2 years later, we knew right then that we'd like to have him.
Davis redrafted Bo in the 7th round of the 1987 draft and offered our number 6 steal full-time money to wear silver and black as an off-season hobby.
It was kind of classic Al Davis in that he thought it was a throwaway pick. He was going to roll the dice.
So you had an executive that was willing to take chances, and he took a chance on an athlete that was not afraid to be unconventional.
The problem in our society is there are a lot of people who don't want them to do both. Let them do it. Let's get behind them. It would be great for America.
Quick pitch to Bo, trying to sweep the left side. Turns it up to the 10, 15, up the left side to 20. He's at the 30. Maybe nobody will get him. 50, 40. He's got a blocker. He's going to the 20, the 10. Touchdown Raiders! Bo Jackson!
You talk about athletes that transcend sport. He transcended all sport.
Bo knows football.
The marketing campaign that they came up with, that Mikey came up with, was brilliant.
Bo knows basketball, too. Bo knows tennis? No.
Bo couldn't have been Bo had he been a Tampa Bay Buck.
In the end, the Raiders got 4 seasons and a superstar. Tampa Bay got absolutely nothing.
And a quick pitch to Jackson, getting an Allen block, cuts under it, bangs through Bosworth, touchdown Raiders!
He played 8 to 9 games a year, was never really in shape for football. Bo Jackson, had he played football, would have set standards that even today wouldn't be topped.
The number 5 draft steal of all time, Dan Marino.
He had the aura of a starting quarterback. If you could order it up on your computer, Dan Marino would be the guy you'd want.
Let's get a drive going and score some damn points.
Throws into the end zone, and it is caught. It's a touchdown!
The 1983 draft will always be remembered as the year of the quarterback.
I don't know if there will ever be another year like the 1983 draft.
There was a glut of quarterback talent.
Baltimore selects as the first choice in the draft quarterback John Elway, Todd Blackledge, Jim Kelly, Tony Eason, Ken O'Brien.
Elway went on to 5 Super Bowls and won 2. Kelly took the Bills to 4 straight Super Bowls. Eason led the Patriots to Super Bowl 20. But Ken O'Brien was a sack machine, and Todd Blackledge threw more interceptions than touchdowns in a checkered career. Incredibly, Marino, our number 5 steal, was the last quarterback taken in the first round.
We couldn't believe that Dan slid to number 27, and especially when Pittsburgh passed him up, because he was in their backyard. They had to know everything about Dan from grade school to high school to college at the University of Pittsburgh.
After a stellar career at Pitt, it seemed like a no-brainer for the Steelers and executive Art Rooney Jr. to draft Marino as Terry Bradshaw's heir apparent.
My father loved him. He loved Danny Marino. I had been phenomenally adamant and obstinate about taking Bradshaw. And my father felt that I should have had the same attitude toward Marino. And I didn't, because we had all the facts and everybody saw him, and I didn't feel I had to sell him.
Rooney didn't argue passionately for Marino, and with an aging Terry Bradshaw, Mark Malone, and Cliff Stout, the Steelers' brain trust felt they were set at quarterback.
Pittsburgh Steelers first-round selection, defensive tackle, Gabriel Rivera.
Rivera's nickname was Senor Sack. He was a quick guy who they saw as another Joe Green.
69, Gabe Rivera. He's been playing better and better, I am told by the coaches of the Steelers, since he's lost some weight.
Rivera is the fastest fat guy he's ever seen.
Coach Noll says we built our team originally starting the defensive line with Joe Green. And I think we should go that way. And his thought process made great sense to me. I thought that was right.
Gil Bird, Jim Jeffcoat,
Dave Remington.
Marino kept falling and nearly slid out of the first round.
Pittsburgh's a big little town, and naturally there were rumors.
There was always the thought, as incorrect as it was, that there was drug allegations.
The theory is that a team that wanted to get him in the lower portion of the first round, and I'm not sure this was Miami, I'm not going to accuse anybody, was putting something out there to discourage the other teams.
There was a ability to check out to see if Dan Marino was on drugs or not on drugs. The test results were in the safe of Foge Fazio.
So when it came time to draft Dan,
next up, Miami Dolphins.
I picked up the phone and I called Foge Fazio, his coach at the University of Pittsburgh, and I said, what's going on? Why is Dan still up there? Because we couldn't figure it out. He said, Coach, I don't know, but take him. And, he's done some things maybe that he's not very proud of in college, but who hasn't?
What are you going to be like when you're 21 years old and you're the BMOC? I mean, you're going to have a few beers. You're going to do things.
The Dolphins select quarterback Dan Marino of Pittsburgh.
From the day he took over, you could see there was something special.
Dan Marino's the best quarterback who ever put on a uniform.
The first time he practiced with the Dolphins, you could hear the ball. I mean, it was nobody had ever been around anything like that.
He had the Joe Namath type of arm, and probably even better than Joe Namath.
I got some footage of Namath, and I put it next to footage of Dan, just to show the similarity in the way they deliver the football.
Perfectly thrown pass by Dan Marino.
Things had changed. Shula changed.
Things changed for the Steelers as well.
Fate really played a cruel trick, I guess, on the Steelers.
Gabe was doing pretty well. And here he, as the season started, the guy got into an auto wreck.
Rivera was legally drunk, traveling at a high rate of speed when he lost control of his vehicle.
He goes out of the back end of a Nissan, and his big body, gets caught through the back window, and it severs the spine.
Rivera's career was over after just 6 games, and Pittsburgh will always wonder what might have been. 1 year later, the Steelers and Dolphins met in the AFC Championship. Terry Bradshaw had retired, and Mark Malone was no match for Marino.
Well, if the Dolphins get in, it's all over. He looks, lofts in the corner of the end zone, net for a touchdown. That's 4 touchdowns in the ball game, and that's a new record.
While our number 5 steal rewrote the record books,
Dan Marino becomes the all-time leader in pass completions in NFL history.
the Steelers never recovered.
Think about how different things would have been had the Steelers taken Dan.
The last 7 years, Chuck Noll made the playoffs just once, just unheard of. Was that all because they didn't draft Dan Marino?
My dad was really upset. He never forgave me about Danny Marino. Even to the end of the year he died, saying you should have taken Marino.
Plenty of defensive stars have risen from draft obscurity. Rodney Harrison, the all-time sack leader among defensive backs, was drafted in the 5th round. Joe Klecko, the 6th. And the MVP of Super Bowl VII was drafted in round 7. But those steals never converted doubters like the Deacon.
The number 4 draft steal of all time, Deacon Jones.
When you consider what he became, which is one of the greatest defensive ends in the history of football, you'd have to say getting Deacon Jones in the 14th round ranks as one of the great steals ever.
His college career was obscure. In 1958, Deacon played for South Carolina State University. After a year of inactivity, our number 4 steal suited up for Mississippi Vocational College.
Deacon Jones came from a tiny little college in the South.
Deacon came up the hard way.
Scouting wasn't as technical as it is right now. I mean, in those days, I was handed a book with a name or two in it and going to a school and didn't know the heights and weights. Now you go into some place, they know everything about you.
In this room, you'll strip down, and hopefully you'll have some underwear on. If you don't, I can loan out a couple of these pages to hide your privates.
Deacon was actually discovered by accident. Some scouts were looking at tape of running backs on another team, and what they saw was this defensive tackle was actually outrunning the running backs that they were scouting.
Once discovered by the Rams, Deacon was a 14th rounder in the 1961 draft.
Defensive end from Mississippi.
He was unknown, unheralded, unpolished, and overweight.
I wanted to be the best football player when I left home. Being a 14th round draft choice and a salary of $7,500, club ain't got very much invested in me. So the only chance that I have is to open my mouth. So I threatened people. I told them I was going to tear their heads off, and I did that.
Our number 4 steal's head slap made believers out of the NFL en route to a Hall of Fame career.
Deacon Jones really was the player who glamorized the pass rusher. I mean, he was the Secretary of Defense, and he had thousands of people in his cabinet.
Competition was what made me go, and the hate of quarterbacks. Sacking the cornerback is just like you devastate a city or you cream a multitude of people. I mean, it's just like you put all the offensive players in one bag and I just take a baseball bat and beat on the bag. Okay, we just found the term.
There are some guys who are so good that they could truly play and excel in any era, and Deacon Jones is one of that group.
The number 3 draft steal of all time, Terrell Davis.
Can't see. Okay, just do this. You don't worry about seeing on this place because we're going to fake it to you, the 15 lead. But if you're not in there, they won't believe we're going to run.
No one could see that Terrell Davis was marked for greatness.
We don't have Terrell Davis, we don't win no Super Bowls.
To say that we knew he was going to come in and be that type of player, I don't think I can sit here and say that today.
Everything changed for the Denver Broncos on the second day of the 1995 draft. Until then, the Broncos and their quarterback, John Elway, were known as big game losers.
And now the Broncos, a troubled team.
Mike Shanahan in 1995 took over an aging, declining, 7-9 team without any picks in the top rounds because of trades.
The Broncos only had a 4th round pick on, so we were looking for diamonds in the rough, so to speak.
The Broncos found their unpolished diamond in Terrell Davis. He was the 196th player taken.
We had him ranked as a 3rd round guy. We weren't looking for a running back at that time, but the value was so good, we took Terrell in the 6th round.
One of the knocks on Terrell Davis coming out of college is that he was not exceptionally fast.
Terrell ran like in the high 4.6s.
He didn't have, 4.3, 4.4 speed.
He had game speed that you can't clock.
At the 1995 draft, no matter who was on the clock, they passed on our number 3 steal.
Kajana Carter, Tyrone Wheatley, Napoleon Kaufman, James Stewart, Rashaan Salaam.
15 running backs went ahead of TD. A number of no-brainers were total bust. Kajana Carter blew out his knee. 2 James Stewarts were taken, one by the Jaguars and one by the Vikings. And the Packers took Travis Jervey instead.
When you get guys that come in as low-round draft picks,
they're not guaranteed anything. They cut 6 rounders every day. They don't cut first and second rounders, so they know they're going to have to make an impression every single day.
Absolutely crushed by rookie Terrell Davis.
Like, who is that? And they're like, that's TD, that's the running back. I said, running back?
You know, Mike Shanahan said he wants some people to impress him.
I'm like, that's going to be our starting running back.
Handoff, Davis cuts back. Davis bounces left side. Here we go, 40. Midfield, it's a foot race. 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown! Terrell Davis, the rookie.
There was nothing that he couldn't do and do well. He came in as a rookie, handled himself like a 10-year vet.
First guy over 200 yards. And obviously, game ball for TD.
When we acquired Terrell, it basically took some of the pressure off of John.
Did you see TD, what he did? He saw Will coming. He knew you couldn't pick it up, so he went weak to pick it up.
Quarterback can only win a championship if he has other pieces around him.
When we showed up that day for the Super Bowl to play Green Bay, that was the first Super Bowl John was in where he knew he had a lot of help behind him.
Davis into the end zone, rocking, standing up. Third rushing touchdown. That's a Super Bowl record for TD.
He was the difference in the game for us and the difference in John getting that first championship.
The Broncos are world champions.
You're looking for a Terrell Davis every year. You hope to be that coach sitting in the room that says, hey, we need to give this guy a look. And I tell our kids every year in training camp, now if you can play, you're going to get on that field, and he's just a great example of that.
Plenty of Super Bowl quarterbacks didn't make our list of top 10 draft steals.
Touchdown Seahawks! We're going to Detroit!
Matt Hasselbeck went in the 6th round. Brad Johnson went in the 9th, and Hall of Famer Bart Starr didn't go into the 17th round. But none of those quarterbacks left their heart in San Francisco.
The number 2 draft steal of all time. Joe Montana.
He wasn't a great player at Notre Dame just by passing through town. His greatness shows up. It showed up there, and it showed up since he probably first put on a male supporter.
39 seconds remaining. And Montana will get one throw. Here's Montana. Back to throw Montana.
Walsh came up to the first draft that he conducted. 49ers did not have a first-round pick. Walsh was looking for a quarterback.
The 49ers had Steve DeBerg, who was considered a bright young prospect.
Great throw by Steve DeBerg, Marv. That was right on the money.
But we wanted a quarterback that could move better than Steve. We had to find somebody that others weren't aware of or that we felt had more potential than other people did.
What Bill Walsh was always a step ahead at was finding that player, not necessarily who everyone else thought was NFL ready, but that he thought he could develop into an NFL star.
Joe Montana played for the most storied program in college football, but scouts had written off the Notre Dame quarterback as a ordinary Joe.
At quarterback, number 3, Joe Montana.
He's got the quick release. He's going to be a fine pro quarterback.
The scouting report on Montana was that he was frail and didn't have a strong arm.
Montana was a quarterback who had been very erratic in college. He'd had some great moments.
And it's a touchdown. Unbelievable finish.
But he hadn't been very consistent.
His college coach, Dan Devine, I'm convinced to this day, talked him down.
When he got to Notre Dame and found that he was listed as the number 12 quarterback. Oh, come on, that's just a story.
He was a part-time starter. For some reason, I'll never know. Maybe it was the length of his hair or something.
After a workout, Walsh realized Montana was the perfect quarterback for his West Coast offense.
He worked out Montana. He liked his athleticism.
He had the quickest feet. He was the most nimble athlete of his time. He reminded me of only one man, and that was Joe Namath. Now our problem was to see how other people felt about him. We called every team in the league, but we certainly didn't bring up Joe's name right away. The best we could do is one team said, well, we might around the 5th round consider him.
After 81 players were drafted, Walsh finally selected our number 2 steal. 3 quarterbacks were taken ahead of Joe Cool. Phil Simms proved a star in New York, but the throw-in Samoan Jack Thompson only threw interceptions, and Kansas City's Steve Fuller failed to make an NFL splash. Montana's selection had the Bay Area scratching its head.
What about Joe Montana and the reasoning behind picking him?
Well, he's been in a great program and had great success. He's intelligent and has a certain amount of size and movement, and he throws the ball well. He just had a good combination that we were always looking for. The first game Joe started, he didn't do that well. The season progressed. In 1980, he played more and more and did better, and then there was a game against New Orleans where we were behind 35-7 at halftime, and Joe brought us all the way back to win the game.
He has Solomon open at the 5, breaks the tackle, goes the outside, touchdown 49ers.
I don't think anybody can go into the stadium against us and feel safe with a victory. At that point, you had to say, this is going to be a great quarterback. We don't have any problems at that position.
58 seconds remaining at the 6-yard line of the Dallas Cowboys.
We're going to call a sprint option. He's going to break up and break into the corner. Okay, you got it? The right will clear.
Everything hangs in the balance now. The season, the outcome of the Super Bowl berth hangs in the balance. He has the ball. Montana rolling out the right. Looking toward the end zone. Throwing under pressure. Throws his pass. Caught by Clark.
Too Tall says to Joe, you just beat America's team. And Joe said, well, you can sit at home with the rest of America and watch the Super Bowl.
He was fired up that day, and he wanted it probably to prove everybody wrong, everybody that didn't draft him in the first 2 rounds and his coaches at Notre Dame, just to show everybody that he was a hell of a player.
To get a guy who was the best quarterback of his era, and some think even maybe the best of all time. Yes, that is very much of a steal.
The #1 draft steal of all time, Tom Brady.
I remember the first time he met me, he called me Kyle Brady, the tight end. He said, hey, Kyle, and I said, hey, Mr. Kraft. I said, I'm Tom Brady. And he goes, oh, yeah, of course. You know, I know. You're a quarterback. I seen you play. You're doing a good job. And I said, well, you know, I just want to tell you it's, you know, one of the best decisions you ever made picking me.
The NFL's best quarterback was a 6th-round steal. In the 2000 draft, 198 players were taken ahead of a man named Brady.
Tom was 199th, and I don't think anyone in the NFL in their wildest dreams looked at him and saw, you know, remotely what he became.
Tom Brady has thrown 4 touchdown passes.
Part of the situation with Tom Brady was he didn't get to play a whole lot at Michigan.
I started as the 7th quarterback on the depth chart. When I was recruited there, the following spring, the head coach was fired. The guy who recruited me left for Stanford, and the quarterback coach was only there for 1 year. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to play.
In Ann Arbor, Brady's leadership skills were overshadowed by Drew Henson's cannon arm.
When Tom Brady played in Michigan, he was solid. He was reliable. He never was anything like he was at the NFL level. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know, you know, when a woman grows up and becomes Gisele Bündchen. I don't know how that happens.
At the 2000 Combine, scouts paid little attention to our #1 steal. If Brady couldn't win the starting job at Michigan, how could he start in the pros?
Teams didn't have a real thorough sense of what he was all about as a quarterback. His athleticism didn't show up very well.
He did not have the prototypical NFL body. He came out kind of skinny, and they didn't think he was strong enough.
He didn't run very well. He got to the Combine and looked pretty slow.
Brady ran the 40 in a pedestrian 5.2 seconds.
You want to see them run 5 or under.
What would he be? Maybe a backup at best. Maybe a starter if you really worked with him and developed him.
Only one man saw something in Brady, the late Dick Raybon, the Patriots quarterback coach.
I sent Dick to see a couple quarterbacks prior to the 2000 draft, and you know, he really came back and felt like that Tom would be the best fit for our system and our team. We had an opportunity to take him. You know, we took him.
Welcome to the first NFL college player draft of the new millennium.
Part of the reason he lasted for us as long as he did was we had fewer than 40 players on our roster, and we were $10.5 million over the cap. One of the positions that we did have filled was quarterback.
Fires, touchdown. McKee fires. Drew Bledsoe's third touchdown pass of the game.
So even though Tommy's name was higher up on our draft board, we kept on passing his name until we got to a point where he was so much higher than so many of the other players, we couldn't pass him up any longer.
6 quarterbacks were taken ahead of Tom Terrific: Chris Redman, Mark Bulger, Chad Pennington, Giovanni Carmazzi, T. Martin, and even Spurgeon Wynn.
How did Spurgeon Wynn get picked ahead of Tom Brady? That's a question that everybody in the NFL has asked over the last 6 years.
What they didn't have is what the scouts don't measure: the intangibles.
You can never, ever, ever measure how bad a guy wants it. When he was a kid, idolized Joe Montana, idolized the 49ers. His whole life, he wanted to be this.
Brady back to throw, shoots it long, touchdown, what a great throw! Brady looks, fires, end zone wide open, touchdown!
In his second season, Brady replaced an injured Drew Bledsoe.
Brady drops back to throw, looks, fires right, touchdown!
And led the Patriots to a world championship.
And the Patriots are Super Bowl champions!
Our number 1 draft steal has won 2 more titles while becoming the second quarterback to start in 5 Super Bowls.
Classic case of where the NFL just can't see around the corner and why this thing is not anywhere near the exact science that they like to pretend it is.
He's become one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and that doesn't really have anything to do with Bill and I. That has everything to do with Tommy Brady. If we were smart, we would have drafted him sooner than 199th overall. That's the truth.
And Foxborough loves Tom Brady.
In this year's draft, teams will be picking plenty of blue chippers, but in the end, it will probably be a draft steal like Tom Brady that makes the difference.